Hey guys, Joey Shanks here once again, and we're going to be dealing with 16mm cameras. You may have seen our Super 8 Filmmakers Guide series. But in these couple episodes, we're going to take it up a notch and work with 16mm film, which is one step up from Super 8. This is a K3 Russian camera, which was made from 1970 to around 1989. And the difference between, working with Super 8 is really easy. You just pop the cartridge in, you can just point and shoot and get a pretty good exposure with it. There's definitely a steeper learning curve when it comes to working with 16mm film cameras. And it really is just a different sized gate inside the camera. And a lot of these older cameras have already been changed to Super 16. And I purchased this one with a Super 16 gate installed. But the one stipulation is that you're gonna need to get 16mm film that only has one perforation on the side. So 17 to 70, that controls your zoom. With an aperture of 1.9 to 22. It takes a bayonet mount where there's a bottom latch here, or push it this way, detaches. This is at 24 frames a second. Now there's two different kinds of mounts. This is the bayonet, and the other one takes an M mount, which is for Pentax lenses. It's kind of a screw-in mount, which seems nicer because you might have the ability to use different lenses if you had a screw mount. So it gives you the options between 8 frames, and you can go all the way up to 48. You line up the red dots. But they say even if you keep turning it, past the 48, you can get 60. And here, this is your gauge for your light meter, if you do have batteries for it. Now, some of this stuff may be in Russian. What this is saying right here on the top here is saying frames per second. The inner set of numbers is the film speed. We want to match up the 250 to 24 because that's as far as we can go for film speed. Currently, the light meter is off. If I were to rotate it, going parallel with our lens, that would turn it on. And you would see a needle going in and out, and you have to line up the needle so that it's in the center. This is how you actually wind the camera. It doesn't take batteries or anything like that. It can do up to about 28 seconds at 24 frames a second. Turn it counterclockwise to wind it, and you have your trigger switch, where we even can thread in a remote trigger switch, just like a Super 8 camera does. There's even one on the back that's made for stop motion animation or just taking single frames. Okay, so let's open this guy up and learn how to load it. All right, so now we kind of see the innards of the camera. So this is your take-up reel, and this is where you put your film in. 50-foot rolls, just like our Super 8 camera does, about 2 minutes and 47 seconds. I'm using the exact same stock, the 7219, so it's about a 500 speed film. But I would recommend trying to find some older 16mm film to practice loading it. Now, I went to the New York Film Academy in like 2002, and I shot on 16mm film, so I have about 10 or 12 rolls of 16mm film that I'm using just to practice on. Now, it originally came with loop formers. So there are these guys that sit in here, and it would help form the loop when you put the film in, but I was having trouble with them, and it was actually causing it to catch and jam up a little bit. But I wouldn't recommend removing those loop formers because that wasn't even my problem. The film just wasn't getting a secure connection within the center wheel there with the sprockets. So if you're having a problem with the film just not catching within that circular piece there, try lifting up the smooth round pin on the bottom or top of the assembly to tighten or loosen the film going through that area. And that will probably do the trick. Kind of just want to set it so it's kind of right at this position here. So I'm pushing the trigger down and nothing's happening, so you just want to kind of give it a little nudge. And okay, so I'm going to stop it there. I can tell that it's not caught within the sprockets. So hopefully by moving this guy up and down, it'll catch. And that caught really nicely. So when I tug on it, notice that it's not moving. I'm gonna run off some more slack. Make a loop here, about that long. But there's a sprocket grabber that's right around here. Now we want to put our pressure plate back on. Okay, so after that we're going to continue advancing the film. Create another loop and work it up. Okay. Push this guy back over the top so it blocks the film to come upwards. Now you want the bottom loop to be a smidge longer than the top loop. And let's hit the trigger again. And we'll stop it. I now put it on my take-up reel. And that looks pretty good. I just turned it to 24 frames a second. I would say this is a little too much at the top here and a little too much at the bottom, but I think it's close enough where if this was real film, I would just go with it. That's how you would do it. Okay, so when you got your film loaded, you're gonna close the top here. A good practice is to always tape down the top. It's gonna block any extra unwanted light. And it kind of lets you know that, hey, I maybe shouldn't open this camera up without asking someone. A lot of times these cameras, the light meters aren't as accurate, so you're gonna really want to be able to use a light meter to properly get a good light reading. The original batteries that go for this camera, they don't make them anymore because the mercury content was too high. So I would recommend not even using the light meter on this camera because you can use hearing aid batteries that will fit into the same slot, but it's gonna give you a wonky reading. So it's best just to not trust the light meter on board the camera. So what I would recommend is using a small handheld light meter. We're using a Sekonic light meter that gives you the option to have cine settings here. And a lot of times people really get intimidated by looking at one of these things because they see all these dials and they're just like, this is way too complicated. But it's really actually fairly simple. The biggest thing is just to get the ASA right, or the ISO, and the film we're using here is 500 speed film. So we were just gonna make sure that our ASA is set to 500, and we would cover up the light sensor just to make sure that it goes all the way to 0. So those are probably the two biggest things that you need to check with using a classic old school light meter. So pretty much what you do is just come up, make sure you're not casting any shadows when you take the light reading, click it once and pull a light reading. Reads 320, as you can see it there. So all you do is line up the white arrow here to where it says 320. You see there's a red line in between the 18 and 32. So that's for 24 frames a second. If you can see right here, that's an 8. So that means we need to be at an f8. And that's all there is to it. It's really not that tricky. So what you would want to do if you were using just your standard HDSLR is just make sure that your ISO is set to 500 to match the speed of the film, and then your shutter at 60, because when shooting at 24 frames a second, the shutter will be 60. So we're at a 5.6 now, and it looks a smidge bright. So if we go one step down to an 8, that looks like the proper exposure. The next option that you could possibly do is use an iPhone light meter. So you have the option here to set it to ISO 500, and that's what I've done. And for this, I'm gonna try to get as much of the face in the shot as I can. And we'll hit measure. And matching up the 60 around a 5.6, maybe to an f8. So this one works pretty good as well. So if you guys wanna know a little bit more about film, check out the whole Super 8 Filmmaker's Guide series, because a lot of those same principles and information can coincide with 16mm film. And the fair is gonna be coming to North Carolina in about a week or so, and I'm gonna take this camera to the fair because all those rides are like from 1970 anyways, so I think I'm gonna be able to create some really cool looking imagery and create a very 1970 look. And for those of you who are interested in how Galaxy Gulch is going, our Super 8 short film, seriously, take a chill pill.
starting to freak me out a little bit.
We still have some pickup shots to do and some special effects elements to get, but we're gonna try to use this 16mm camera and capture some of the magnetic putty stuff that's gonna be happening in the well. So stay tuned to see how that turns out. Thanks again for watching, guys, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we will see you next time. Later.